Hello and welcome to 5-Minute Math. Today we are looking at the Algebra 1 concept of quadratic domain and range. This is standard A.6A in the great state of Texas, and we are using item number 2 off the 2019 released STAAR test. If you haven't done so already, please go ahead and take a moment to pause the video, work this problem out on your own, unpause it, and we will look at our answers together. So we have a golfer hitting a golf ball from a tee box 6 yards above the ground. That's 18 feet above the ground. So maybe he's at Topgolf or something like that. One of those fancy driving ranges that's got the 3 different tiers. And he hits it, and it lands, looks like lands right around there. And if you wanted to actually put it on an XY grid here, it looks like it's about 230 yards away, since looks like we're dealing with yards here. So we actually have a quadratic function that represents how high it went. So this is its vertex right here. All right, so we are looking simply for the domain. All right, so what is the domain? And we don't want to confuse it with the range. These two terms are typically paired together. So let's start with the domain because that's what we're looking for. So the domain is the set of all possible independent variable values. And so when we're talking the independent variable values, we should be thinking to ourselves, those are the x values. So we start with the x, and it gets modified somehow by coefficients and constants, and that results in our y, because typically when we're looking at standard forms of either linear functions or quadratic functions, it's y equals, and then a whole bunch of stuff happens to x. So if our x values are our domain, then that means our y values are going to be represented by the range. So the range is technically the set of all dependent variable values, because the y depends on all the things you do to x. And it could be represented a few different ways, right? So it could be represented as y. Sometimes if it's a function, you might see f of x, you might see g of x, h of x, anything of x. So think of it in these layman's terms here. Range is y, domain is x. You really won't go wrong. So here's our domain. As we are looking at it, the x-axis, the horizontal distance here. So that 230 is going to be really important. So our range is going to be this vertical, the y value. So if we were looking at that, that 110 would be important because it looks like that's the height of this arc for this golf ball here. So we can, knowing that the domain is the x, the range is the y, we can go ahead and eliminate 2 answers. Because take a look. Look at G and H. They're wanting you to find the set of all numbers that are included in y, and we're literally looking for x. So we're going to go ahead and eliminate those, and you notice that those are looking for, there we go, they're looking for that 36. That's the height right there, is the 36. The 110 is the x value. The y is the 36, and they just gave you 2 answers of either the starting point of the 6 yards or the ending point of 0 yards above the ground. We don't need either of those. We are looking for the x value. So where does it start? Well, let's look at our x values. It's going to start at 0. Okay, so why can't we go beyond that 0? Well, because he really can't go negative, I guess, unless he hits from behind the tee box, but it doesn't really make sense in this real world situation to have a negative. So we're going to stick with that 0 as the starting point, because that's where he is. How far does he go? He ends up at that 230. And we're going to say less than or equal to because he lands on the 230, so you can actually include it, right? And so the range is, as the ball was flying, it actually hit every single real number in between 0 and 230 quickly as it went on this arc, and it landed at the 230, and that's where it stopped. So we're not going to choose this j because this 6 is the y value. And we want the x value, which is the 0. So there's our answer, F.